I always imagined coming home would be a good thing. 4 years is a long time to be away from your wife and kid. Every night in Syria, I fell asleep picturing it, the reunion. I'd walk up to the door, knock just to mess with them, and Katie would swing it open with that same smile she used to wear when I came back from training. Nick would scream, "Dad," and run full speed into my arms. We'd cry, laugh, eat whatever Katie cooked that night. That was the movie in my head. Reality? A very different story. It was early September when I landed in Charlotte and rented a truck to make the drive back to Asheville. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to surprise them. I needed to. Things had been weird with Katie the last few months. Her emails got shorter. Our video calls more spaced out. When she answered, she seemed distracted, like she was always in the middle of something else. I chalked it up to stress. Being a military spouse isn't easy. I figured she was tired, juggling the business and the house and raising Nick basically on her own. She's a strong woman, but even the strongest people break. I thought I'd come home and relieve some of that pressure. Be a husband again. Be a dad again. I pulled into the neighborhood around dusk. The sky was a mix of gold and slate gray, and the street looked exactly the same as I left it. Same pothole by the corner, same kid's bike lying in the neighbor's yard. Nothing looked out of place until I got to our driveway. Parked out front was a sleek black Tesla. Brand new. Clean. The kind of car that says, "I do yoga and drink kale smoothies and probably live on protein shakes." Not the kind of car you'd expect to see in the driveway of a sergeant's home. It didn't take long for my stomach to tighten. Then I saw them, balloons tied to the porch railing. Blue, silver, red? "Happy birthday, Nick," they read, clear as day. Except Nick's birthday? It was in December. This was September 9th. I froze behind the wheel. At first, I thought maybe it was a neighborhood kids' party. Maybe they were throwing something for someone else and I was reading too far into it. But my gut told me otherwise. I cut the engine and sat there a few minutes, heart pounding like I was back in combat. Something was off. I could feel it in my bones. Instead of walking up the front steps, I circled around the side gate and crept into the backyard. It felt wrong to sneak around my own house, but I didn't want to walk into something I couldn't walk back out of. Not without knowing the full picture first. The porch light at the back was on, casting a warm glow across the deck and into the kitchen through the sliding glass doors. I moved toward them slowly, staying low, quiet like I'd been trained. The glass was clean. Katie always kept it spotless. From there, I had a full view of the kitchen, and what I saw knocked the wind clean out of me. Katie was standing by the counter, knife in hand, slicing a cake, chocolate with blue frosting. She looked content. Her hair was up in a loose bun, her face clean of makeup, her body language completely relaxed. She wore the old Carolina Panthers t-shirt she used to sleep in when we were first married. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize. Younger, maybe mid-30s. Athletic. Tan. He was barefoot, wearing joggers and a sleeveless hoodie like he lived in a gym. He was sipping from a wine glass and laughing at something Katie said. She fed him a bite of cake with a spoon, like that kind of spoon feed you do in a relationship when things are light and an asterisk mate. In the background, I saw Nick playing on the rug in the living room, building something with his Legos, unaware of the situation that was unfolding right behind him. I felt something inside me crack. I didn't make a sound. I just stared, frozen, absorbing every detail like I was taking a mental photograph. The open bottle of wine on the counter. The casual way she touched his arm. The way she leaned into him, smiling in that half-laugh she used to give me. I backed away slowly, made sure no one saw me, and slipped back through the side gate. My hands were shaking as I got into the truck. I didn't start it right away. I just sat there in silence, my mind spinning. I'd been gone 4 years. For birthdays. For Christmases. I'd missed skin knees, school plays, and bedtime stories. And I did it for them. For our future. But now? That future didn't even seem to have a space for me in it. I ended up at some roadside motel off the highway. Cheap room. Buzzing neon light outside. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, still in my uniform, unsure of what to do. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Katie. Her message read, "Hey babe, so sorry for the weird timing. Dylan was just over helping me plan a surprise for Nick. He's my trainer, remember? Nothing weird, I promise. We didn't know you'd be home already. Hope everything's okay. We can talk later." I didn't respond. I stared at that message so long my screen dimmed and went black. Trainer. Planning a surprise. Nothing weird. If it was nothing weird, why did it feel so wrong? The message didn't sound like her. It sounded like someone trying to cover tracks. Polite, vague, overly explanatory. She never called him Dylan in messages before. It was always my trainer or the gym guy. And now suddenly it's Dylan, like I'm supposed to know him? And how exactly do you celebrate a kid's birthday 3 months early without mentioning it to your husband? I lay back on the stiff motel mattress, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time since I left Syria, I felt completely disoriented. Not from jet lag or culture shock, but because the place I'd been dreaming of for 4 years didn't exist anymore. At least, not the way I remembered it. Katie was moving on. Maybe she'd started a long time ago. Maybe I missed the signs while I was busy trying not to get blown up halfway across the world. Maybe she thought I wouldn't come back at all. I kept asking myself, was I being paranoid? Was I jumping to conclusions? Or had I just finally opened my eyes? That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the cracked ceiling above the motel bed and replayed that moment at the glass door over and over again. I could still see her hand brushing his. The way he leaned in. The way she looked like she hadn't missed me at all. That's when it hit me, something that sat in the pit of my stomach like a cold stone. The home I thought I was fighting for, it moved on without me. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't welcome there anymore. I don't know how long I sat in that motel room, staring at the ceiling like it had answers. The hum of the fridge, the flicker of the broken light outside, the ache behind my eyes, it all just blurred into one long, sleepless night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Katie feeding him cake. I saw that Tesla in our driveway. I saw the balloons spelling out my son's name like a taunt. It wasn't just what I saw, it was how normal it all looked. How comfortable she was with him there. That's what messed me up. By morning, I was still in the same spot, still wearing the same uniform I'd come home in. I looked down at my boots, dusty, scuffed, worn from the desert, and realized how far I was from the life I thought I had. That's when the thoughts started coming in fast, like a reel spinning in my mind. Things I hadn't paid attention to before. Things I chalked up to stress, loneliness, bad timing. But now, they took on a different weight. Katie used to call me every day, video chats with Nick, stories about the house, little things that made me feel connected. But somewhere around year 3, that rhythm changed. Calls got shorter. Her eyes wandered more during our conversations. Sometimes Nick wouldn't even come to the screen, and when I asked, she'd say, "Oh, he's just cranky," or "He's with the neighbor." At the time, I didn't question it. But now I remembered the one time Nick had run into the frame and said something weird. Something that stuck with me even if I didn't think much of it at the time. He said, "Uncle D helped me fix my bike." I remember frowning. I asked Katie, "Who's Uncle D?" She laughed it off, said it was a nickname for a neighbor named Derek or Daniel or something. Just a guy down the street who helps out sometimes. But now I was thinking about that Tesla again. And the wine bottle. And that message, Dylan was just over helping me plan a surprise. Uncle D. Dylan. Trainer. Friend. Neighbor. The story kept changing. Then there was the gym. About 2 years into my deployment, Katie joined this upscale place in downtown Asheville. She made a big deal about it, said it was her way of coping with the stress of solo parenting. I was happy for her, genuinely. I even encouraged it. Get out of the house, I said. Do something for yourself. But then she started dropping comments about her trainer. Dylan this, Dylan that. At first, it was casual. He pushed me so hard today. He's got this crazy meal plan. That sort of thing. But then it turned into inside jokes. Dylan says I'm hopeless with squats, she'd text, followed by a laughing emoji. Then photos started showing up, progress pics, she called them. Always from the gym. Always in tight leggings or sports bras she wouldn't have worn in public before. And Dylan? Always in the background, always smiling. I remember one time I called her out, half joking, half not. Getting real close to that trainer, huh? She rolled her eyes and said, "He's gay, Jason. Relax." And I did. I actually felt stupid for saying anything. But now, thinking back, she never once said that again. And suddenly, the way she'd mentioned him? It all seemed like a setup, a way to disarm me before I could ask more questions. Then there was the phone. Right around the same time she joined the gym, she changed the password on her phone. She said it was a software update that wiped her settings. Nothing big, she said. Just had to reset everything. But what stuck with me was that she didn't offer the new one. I didn't push. I figured if you're married and you have to ask for someone's password, maybe you've got bigger problems. Turns out we did. That winter, she stopped answering my video calls altogether. Said the Wi-Fi kept cutting out. Said Nick was always too tired after school. I started calling her in the mornings instead, but more often than not, it went to voicemail. When she did pick up, it felt like I was talking to someone on autopilot. She smiled at the camera, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her voice was flat. Sometimes she forgot details I'd told her just a week before, like I hadn't even said them. I asked if she was okay. She said she was just tired. That being a single parent was hard. I believed her. Or I tried to. I started writing letters again. Real ones. Paper and pen. She used to love those. I'd pour everything into them, updates, jokes, little drawings for Nick. I sent one every week for 3 months. Never got a single reply. When I asked her about it, she said, "Oh, the mail must be delayed." And then she changed the subject. The last straw before I left Syria, the part that really gets me now, is when I told her I might be coming home early. I expected excitement, shock, joy. Instead, I got a text back. "Okay, let me know when it's official." That was it. No heart emojis. No, "Nick will be so happy." No, "I can't wait to see you." Just okay. At the time, I told myself she was in shock. That it hadn't sunk in yet. That she was probably busy. But sitting in that motel room, turning it all over in my mind, I realized the truth. She wasn't shocked because she didn't expect me to come back. And maybe she didn't want me to. I got up and splashed water on my face. The mirror over the sink was cracked and the light above it flickered every few seconds. My eyes were bloodshot, my jaw tight. I looked like a man who had been through war and not just the one in Syria. I picked up my phone and opened our text thread again. Her message was still there, sitting like a landmine. Dylan was just over helping me plan a surprise for Nick. It made no sense. Who plans a surprise 3 months early? Who opens a bottle of wine for a casual planning session with a trainer? Who's barefoot in someone else's kitchen like he lives there? Unless he did live there. Maybe not officially. Maybe not with a key. But enough to feel comfortable. I opened my gallery and scrolled back to a photo I took during one of our rare video calls. It was a screenshot of Nick showing me a Lego spaceship he'd built. But in the background, I saw something that hadn't registered until now, a pair of size 12 running shoes by the front door. I don't wear size 12. Dylan does. I closed the phone and sat on the bed again. All those little pieces I'd ignored? They were starting to click together like the Legos Nick used to love. Only this time, the picture they were building was nothing I ever wanted to see. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I was right. Something happened while I was gone. And the worst part? I might have been the last one to know. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of a leaf blower outside my motel window and the taste of stale coffee lingering from the night before. Sleep had been shallow, if I even really slept at all. My head was pounding, my body still jet-lagged and tense from everything I hadn't said the night before. But something in me had shifted. Whatever haze I'd been in was gone. I wasn't spinning anymore, I was focused. And I needed answers. I knew where I had to go. Nick's school wasn't far. I remembered the route well, Maple Ridge Elementary, tucked behind the park with the little red slide he'd loved when he was 5. I hadn't told Katie I was coming. Didn't plan to. If she wanted to lie to me, then I wasn't going to give her a heads up. I parked across the street and watched from behind the wheel like I was back on a stakeout. The bell hadn't rung yet, and parents were starting to gather at the entrance, chatting, sipping coffee, waving at their kids. I scanned the crowd automatically, not even sure what I was looking for until I saw them. Katie was standing near the pickup zone, her hand resting casually on the shoulder of the same man I'd seen in the kitchen 2 nights earlier. Dylan. No gym gear this time. He wore jeans, a gray hoodie, sunglasses perched on his head like he belonged there. Like he had nothing to hide. They weren't touching in any overt way, but there was a closeness between them, something unspoken. She leaned into him slightly, like they'd had this routine for a while. And then Nick came out. He didn't even glance around. He ran straight to them, straight to him, and said something I couldn't hear. Dylan laughed and ruffled Nick's hair before giving him a fist bump. Then Katie kissed Nick on the cheek, and they all walked off toward the Tesla I now recognized as Dylan's. It was parked in a handicapped space like rules didn't apply to him. I didn't move. Just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I should have gotten out. Should have said something. But what would I say? Hey son, surprise, Daddy's home. And by the way, who the hell is this guy taking you to school every morning? Instead, I started the engine and drove off before they could see me. Back at the motel, I finally let myself fall apart for a minute. Just a minute. I threw a pillow across the room, yelled into a towel, paced like a caged dog. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall until the pounding in my chest leveled out. When I could breathe again, I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. I'd never really used it, but Katie had an account. So did the gym she worked out at. It didn't take long to find Dylan's profile at dshaw_fitlife. The kind of account full of shirtless selfies, inspirational quotes, and hashtags like #grindmode and #mendovermatter. I scrolled past dozens of photos before one stopped me cold. It was a picture from last year, October 11th. I know the date because it was the day I'd returned from my first tour and surprised Katie and Nick at the airport. But she hadn't posted anything that day. She told me she'd forgotten to take pictures. Said she was too emotional. In the photo, she was lying on a red plaid blanket, our blanket, the one we used to keep in the back of the SUV for beach trips with Dylan. Her head was resting on his chest. They were at a park somewhere. The caption read, "Rest day with this gem, flexed biceps, red heart, hashtag mental health, hashtag balance, hashtag Sunday vibes." I stared at the image for what felt like hours. She hadn't just moved on. She'd been overlapping lives. One with me on the screen and one with him in person. I downloaded the photo. Then I went deeper. Found posts where she'd commented under his selfies, fire emojis, laughing faces, even amidst this under a story he'd archived from their so-called rest day. I checked the tags. Some of their mutual friends had liked them. People I knew. People who'd never said a word. Betrayal stopped being a question. It was right there, public, documented, and proud. That's when I called my friend Chris. Chris and I served together in Ramadi. He's sharp, loyal, and happens to be a lawyer now, family law, mostly. I hadn't spoken to him in a while, but when I told him what was going on, he didn't waste time. "Jason," he said, "I hate to ask, but do you have any reason to believe Katie may have used your deployment to make legal changes behind your back?" I didn't, but the moment he said it, something clenched in my gut. Chris offered to run a preliminary search and call me back. 24 hours later, he did. "Okay," he said, "brace yourself." Turns out Katie had transferred the Marlowe family tree business, my grandfather's landscaping company that we inherited, entirely into her name. She used a notarized power of attorney to do it. Problem was, the signature on that document wasn't mine. It was close, but not mine. She'd also filed documents declaring me non-communicative due to military absence, which gave her temporary full custodial rights over Nick. Buried in the paperwork was a letter typed, signed in my name, stating that I had voluntarily surrendered custodial involvement and had no interest in returning to the family structure due to personal and emotional strain. It was a forged letter. Chris said the signature wasn't just off, it was a bad copy-paste job. The dates didn't match military logs. The notary used had her license suspended last year. It wasn't just shady, it was criminal. And there, in black and white, was the truth. Katie wasn't just cheating on me with Dylan. She had legally erased me. I sat there in silence while Chris talked me through options. Fraud. Perjury. Custodial interference. Civil damages. He said I had a strong case, but it would take time. Documentation. Witnesses. Strategy. "Jason," he said finally, "don't confront her yet. Not until you have every piece in place. You can't go to war with half a clip." He was right. This wasn't a fight I could win with rage. I needed to think like a soldier. Plan like one. No threats. No reckless moves. Just slow, methodical justice. That night, I wrote Katie an email. Short. Polite. I told her I'd arrived early, saw the balloons, decided not to interrupt, and checked into a motel. I told her I'd like to sit down and talk when things calmed down. No accusations. No anger. I wanted her to feel safe. Unaware. She replied the next morning. "Of course. I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding. Dylan just popped by to drop off a gift for Nick. We really weren't expecting you. We'd love to see you soon. Let's talk, just us." I didn't respond. I wasn't coming to talk. I was building a case. And she didn't even see it coming. I didn't respond to Katie's message. Not that day, not the next. I stared at it for a while, fingers hovering over the keys, and then closed the thread. She was expecting confusion, desperation, maybe even an emotional plea for answers. But I wasn't giving her any of that. She wanted me disoriented. I'd spent too long in that fog already. Now I needed to move like I was still on mission. Quiet. Careful. Calculated. First thing I did was hire a private investigator. Guy named Nathan, who came highly recommended by Chris. Retired police. Low profile. No nonsense. When we met in a coffee shop near the courthouse, he listened to my story with the kind of expression that didn't change once, not even when I mentioned the forged letter. "Give me a week," he said, tapping the edge of his notebook. "I'll start with the boyfriend." I didn't even have to say Dylan's name. It was like Nathan had met 10 of him before. While Nathan got to work, I reached out to someone else, someone from a different part of my life. His name was Devin Morales. We served together in my first deployment. He was a tech specialist back then, and now he worked cybersecurity for a logistics company out of Charlotte. Smart guy. A little twitchy, always drinking energy drinks, but loyal. When I told him I needed access to some private communication, his reply was immediate. "Send me everything you've got." Email addresses, usernames, old logins, whatever. It felt strange calling in favors like this. Like I was activating pieces of a past I'd left behind. But Katie had crossed a line. She didn't just betray me emotionally, she'd made legal moves to lock me out of my own life. I didn't care how long it took. I was going to find every weak link she thought I'd never see. While the wheels turned in the background, I kept my distance. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't post anything. I made myself a ghost, and the silence started to work in my favor. On day 5, Katie messaged again. "Jason, I'm starting to get worried. Are you okay? We need to talk, this isn't like you." No, it wasn't. Because the me she knew was still clinging to a life that no longer existed. This version of me? He was watching. He was gathering. By day 7, Nathan checked in. "Got something," he said. "You were right to follow your gut." Turns out Dylan had a routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, he left Katie's house and drove across town to a condo registered under another woman's name, Sarah Conway. Widow. 42. Inherited nearly $3 million in assets when her husband passed last year. Dylan had been her trainer too. They'd met at a grief wellness event hosted by the same gym. Nathan got footage clean and indisputable. Dylan entering the building, staying the night, and leaving in gym clothes the next morning. But that wasn't all. "There's a third," Nathan said. "Some woman in Charlotte. Real estate broker. Been tagged with him in a bunch of private stories." So Katie's boyfriend wasn't just a homewrecker. He was a serial opportunist. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. On some level, I almost felt sorry for her. She'd thrown away our marriage for a guy who was juggling women like gym memberships. But sympathy was a luxury I didn't have time for. That same week, Devin got into Katie's old email. He called me at 1 a.m. talking fast like he always did. "Okay, so here's the headline, you were right. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning an exit. Like, full-on life reset without you." He forwarded me a chain of emails between Katie and her best friend, some woman named Jenna. I read them under the glow of a motel lamp, jaw tight, stomach hollow. "The plan is to slowly shift the accounts over before Jason's back," one message read. "Use the POA. It'll be easier if everything looks clean." Another one said, "If he comes back early, we'll need a backup story. Dylan can't be around too much." I scrolled through dozens of exchanges like that. Plans. Contingencies. Even mentions of selling the house if I stayed gone long enough. Then I found one that nearly made me drop the phone. "I keep dreaming he just disappears," Katie had written. Like, I opened the door and he's just not there. No funeral. No explanation. Just gone. It would be so much easier. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because part of me had already suspected she'd stopped hoping I'd come back. I just hadn't realized she'd wanted me erased entirely. I sent everything to Chris. He reviewed the legal side while Devin encrypted the data for backup. We built a clean digital folder with every **T, every bank statement, every document tied to the fraudulent POA. We flagged the notary, tracked the date of the forged signature, and even found the original copy of my actual power of attorney signed years earlier with different clauses and limits. Then I called the bank. I had just enough access left to freeze the joint account before she could drain it. I redirected all direct deposits to a new solo account and locked my military pension with two-factor verification. I called our accountant and revoked shared access to business funds. Every move was logged. Every action legal. And I did it all without saying a word to her. By week 2, Katie messaged again. "Jason, please. I know things have been strange, but can we talk? You disappearing like this isn't fair. Nick misses you." Nick. That part cut deeper than I expected. Not because I didn't believe she was using him as bait, but because I missed him too. More than anything. And now I had to figure out how to separate the mess from my role as his father. That's when Chris sent me the final update. "Custody's going to be messy," he said. "But here's our ace, she committed fraud, and we can prove it. You've got everything you need to file a counterclaim. We'll freeze the false custody paperwork, challenge the notary, and cite Dylan's cohabitation and background." I asked about the letter. "The fake one?" "Yeah. We'll submit handwriting samples. Have your CO write a statement confirming your communication timelines. Once the court sees the discrepancy between your active duty records and her story, they'll throw the letter out." And just like that, the mission was real. I wasn't just a husband in pain anymore. I was a father reclaiming his place. A soldier defending the only thing that still mattered. I didn't know what would happen when I walked into that courtroom. I didn't know if Nick would recognize me. But I did know one thing. Katie started this war behind my back. Now, I was taking it straight to her doorstep. I've been through missions where the stakes were life and death, IED sweeps, urban patrols, compound clearances. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the tension I felt walking into family court. The silence, the carpeted halls, the scent of printer paper and stale coffee. It was all deceptively calm, like walking into a storm that hadn't started yet. But I knew what I carried into that room. I had evidence, a strategy, and a reason that burned hotter than any fire I'd ever been through: my son. Katie sat across from me at the petitioner's table, dressed like she wanted the court to see her as the wounded spouse. Light makeup, conservative blouse, hair neatly curled. She didn't even glance in my direction when I entered. Dylan sat behind her, pretending not to be nervous, but I saw the twitch in his jaw when he noticed Chris walk in with a thick folder under his arm. I sat down, straightened my jacket, folded my hands. Game time. The judge was a woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed, zero nonsense. She looked over the initial filings, her expression unreadable. Katie's lawyer, a guy who clearly made his living off messy divorces, stood first. "Your Honor," he began, "my client is here today seeking continued full custody of her son, Nicholas Marlowe, on the grounds of emotional abandonment and psychological unfitness on the part of Mr. Jason Marlowe. We have testimony from a licensed psychologist, as well as written declarations, documenting a clear pattern of instability brought on by PTSD and prolonged military detachment." I didn't flinch. I let him speak. Let him lay out the foundation of their case. It was rehearsed, clinical, and exactly what I expected. They were trying to paint me as broken, unfit, a ghost who disappeared and now wanted rights back because of guilt. Then they called their expert, a psychologist, middle-aged man with a shiny forehead and the smug confidence of someone who'd been paid too well. He testified that I displayed classic signs of PTSD, citing documents Katie had provided. He referenced sleeplessness, detachment, irrational resentment, and cited a speculative risk of emotional volatility. Chris leaned over and whispered, "Watch this," just before standing to cross-examine. "Dr. Perlman, you stated you've never actually met or evaluated Mr. Marlowe. Is that correct?" "That's correct," the psychologist replied. "And your statements are based entirely on documents provided by Mrs. Marlowe?" "Yes." "Did you know that some of those documents, including a letter allegedly from Mr. Marlowe, were forged?" The psychologist blinked. "I wasn't aware." Chris held up a packet. "Your Honor, this is a certified handwriting analysis, notarized and compared with Jason's official military paperwork. It shows clear evidence that the letter submitted under his name is a forgery." Murmurs in the courtroom. Chris turned back. "Dr. Perlman, would it concern you to know that the person who provided you this fraudulent material, your client, also paid you in cash for your testimony despite your previous business relationship with her boyfriend, Dylan Shaw?" The psychologist's face drained of color. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Is that accurate?" "Dr. Perlman stammered. I may have done some fitness training with Mr. Shaw in the past. But I wasn't aware." "No further questions," Chris said, voice calm, eyes cold. It unraveled from there. We presented the documentation. The false power of attorney, the doctored custody filings, the email chains from Katie's account discussing how to lock Jason out of the finances. We showed **TS of her online correspondence with Jenna, openly admitting the plan to remove me from the family's legal structure before I returned. Then came the final blow. A video, recorded by Nathan, showing Dylan picking Nick up from school, and Nick calling him Dad. The judge's head snapped up. "Your son refers to this man as his father?" I nodded. "That's what he's been told, Your Honor." Chris explained how Katie had enrolled Nick in school under Dylan's last name, without any legal documentation, without any notice to me. The judge requested the school files. They matched what we said. When Katie took the stand, she tried to spin it. Said she did it to create stability for Nick. That I'd been gone so long, and she didn't know when I was coming back. She looked shaken, like she couldn't figure out where the ground had gone under her feet. Then she made a mistake. She cried. Not because she was sorry, not because she felt remorse, but because the control she'd spent the last 2 years carefully building was slipping between her fingers in real time. And the courtroom wasn't buying it. The judge called a recess. I stepped into the hallway, heart hammering. I didn't know how it would fall. I didn't trust anything until it was signed. Stamped. Final. 20 minutes later, we were called back. The judge shuffled some papers, then looked straight at Katie. Mrs. Marlowe, you knowingly submitted falsified documentation, denied a parent due process, and exposed your child to an unrelated adult under false pretenses. This is a clear violation of legal protocol and ethical standards. Katie didn't move. Her face was blank now, drained. The judge turned to me. Mr. Marlowe, until a full custody evaluation is completed, I am awarding you temporary primary custody of Nicholas Marlowe. You will retain exclusive residential rights until further review. Mrs. Marlowe will be allowed supervised visitation during weekends only. Katie gasped. The judge continued. Additionally, this court is issuing a temporary restraining order against Mr. Shaw until an investigation can confirm or deny concerns raised about his conduct, living arrangements, and influence over the minor child. Chris put his hand on my back. You did it, he whispered. But I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt the weight of the war I'd been dragged into. A war I didn't start, but one I'd damn sure finish. Katie looked at me across the room as the judge closed the hearing. There was no rage in her face, just disbelief, like she still couldn't process what had just happened. I didn't look back. I stood up, buttoned my coat, and walked out of that courtroom with my boots echoing through the hall like thunder. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't walking away from something broken. I was walking toward something worth saving. The day I picked Nick up from school, I wasn't sure what to expect. He stood at the edge of the sidewalk, clutching his backpack, scanning faces. Then he saw me. At first, he didn't move. But when I said, "Hey, bud," he ran. Full sprint. Straight into my arms. I lifted him off the ground, held him tight, and something inside me clicked back into place. That night, we ate pizza, watched The Iron Giant, and laughed until we both passed out on the couch. For the first time in years, I felt like a dad again. I called the school the next day. Told them to update Nick's records, remove Dylan's last name, and reinstate mine. They apologized more than they needed to. I didn't care. What mattered was that Nick's identity, my son's name, was back where it belonged. He started asking questions soon after. Where had I been? Why hadn't I been around more? I told him the truth in pieces he could understand. I had to go far away to keep people safe. But I never stopped loving you.